Councillor French, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think that there is a single councillor in this room tonight that actually wants the scale of development proposed in this draft local plan. Sadly, this process is not about the democratic wishes of the council or the electorate. It is about satisfying a planning inspector. And a lot of anger has been directed at the planning department. However, that is unfair. So far, whether we like it or not, they have done their job, which is to commission the necessary technical work to produce a draft plan. That is what is in front of us tonight. However, this is where the political judgment comes in. It is for us as councillors to make a judgment based on the advice that we have been given as to whether this is the right plan for us. In particular, we need to determine an annual housing number that we think the planning inspector will accept, having considered the constraints that might have an impact on that figure. It is at this point that I regret that I part company with the views of the majority of my group in two areas. Firstly, the NPPF states that we can only redesignate Greenbelt land in exceptional circumstances. And yes, the production of a new local plan is one of those circumstances. So I accept, based on the limited brownfield land available and the fact that 89% of the borough is in the Greenbelt, that it is necessary to undertake a strategic review. And yes, it is likely that we will need to make some strategic releases of Greenbelt land as we are so far adrift of our housing target without it. But what we have done in this plan isn't strategic. We have simply taken the housing number we have been given and assessed whether there is enough identified land in the Schlage, regardless of whether that land is in the Greenbelt or not. That has resulted in the identification of land for over 6,000 houses in the Greenbelt between the Burpham boundary and Effingham, not to mention the 5 form-entry secondary schools in West Clarendon. That is not a strategic release of Greenbelt. We have simply ignored Greenbelt designation to satisfy our housing target. So on that basis, if our housing number doubled overnight, would we simply look at whether we had enough identified land left in the Schlage and take even more Greenbelt? When do we say no? Is it when we run out of available land to develop? When do we have any form of constraint? We seem to have gone from the NPPF view that Greenbelt can only be used in exceptional circumstances to ignoring the constraints of the Greenbelt altogether. Mr. Mayor, that cannot be right. My second point relates to the housing number itself. As we know, forecasting household projections is an inexact science. As we are aware, the Office for National Statistics has recently released some new projections which at last indicate some less aggressive assumptions about population growth, and that is welcome news. Therefore, we have to be more challenging when it comes to evaluating our annual housing target. That means taking a fresh look at the projections used by GL Hearn and using some that are more favourable to us, provided that they are still defensible on an objective basis. So I return to my original point. The planners have done their job. Now we have to make the political judgment as councillors, and that means two things. Being more creative when we consider the housing number we should set, but still based on legitimate population projections. And secondly, using the Greenbelt as a genuine constraint that prevents us from meeting our objectively assessed housing need in full. We need a plan that will be challenging to the planning inspector, but sufficiently credible to pass the test. Regrettably, that is not the approach with the current local plan. It is designed to pass the inspector's test with flying colours and without risk, whereas we should be presenting the minimum that will be acceptable. We have to look at this again and exercise true political judgment. And let me be clear, I am not advocating the submission of a plan that will fail. That is a pointless waste of taxpayers' money and would ill serve our current and future residents. Mr. Mayor, I consider that this plan in its current form will do irreparable and irreversible damage to this borough as a whole. It isn't ready, and I cannot possibly advocate it to my residents. It is for this reason that I regret that I cannot vote for this draft in its current form. After 21 years as a councillor, it is the first, and I hope the last time, that I will ever have to oppose my own party's policy.
Councillor Wicks, please.